Sword Art Online is a disaster compared to Venom, Let There Be Carnage. SAO is full of shallow characters, cringy dialogue, and ridiculous plots that go nowhere. It's boring and overhyped. Meanwhile, Venom knows how to entertain, and it doesn't waste your time with empty drama. Here's why Venom Let There Be Carnage is much better.
Eddie Brock is still struggling to coexist with Venom. When deranged serial killer Cletus Cassidy also becomes host to an alien symbiote named Carnage, Eddie and Venom must put aside their differences to stop his reign of terror. In this video, I'll break down the Venom Let There Be Carnage movie. Let's get started. The movie begins at the St. Estes Reform School in California in 1996, where we meet Cletus Cassidy and Francis Barrison at a younger age. They sit inside of dingy and dark cells speaking to each other through the walls. Francis tells Cletus that she will be taken away and imprisoned due to her powers becoming too strong and uncontrollable. Francis is then forcibly thrown into the back of a police van, while Cletus helplessly watches from the window. There is only one guard posted with Francis inside the van. Francis takes advantage of this and uses her power of sonic screams. This causes the van to flip over and Francis tries to go for the guard's gun. However, the guard is able to aim the gun at Francis and shoot her in the face, destroying one of her eyes. Francis survives this and later wakes up inside a cell at the Ravencroft Institute, which is made to contain her powers. In the movie's opening scene, several mistakes were made. For starters, Francis is a superpowered individual, yet she wasn't even handcuffed or restrained during her transport. The guard acted like he had no idea about Francis's power because he would have had his gun aimed at her the whole time if he did. They should have sent people from the Ravencroft Institute to transport Francis. That way, they would have been more prepared for her. For example, the guards could have worn soundproof earmuffs to nullify Francis's sonic scream. Just sedating Francis would have made everything so much easier, or gag her so she can't open her mouth and scream. Furthermore, the way that the children in St. Estes were being treated obviously wouldn't help them deal with whatever trauma landed them there. Instead of reforming them as the school's name suggests, they helped create two sadistic killers. This may have been prevented with good treatment. Years later, we move to the present day, and our hero Eddie Brock is brought to the San Francisco police station by Detective Patrick Mulligan, the same person who Francis attacked during her transport. Patrick makes it clear that he doesn't like Eddie, which upsets Eddie's other half, Venom. Venom really wants to eat Patrick's head. Eddie and Venom end up fighting over this in the women's bathroom, and it's clear at this point that the two aren't getting along very well. Patrick wants Eddie to chat with Cletus in prison since he refuses to talk to anyone else. Eddie agrees and goes to the San Quentin prison to interview Cletus. Eddie meets Cletus in the prison cell and is offered a deal. The serial killer asks Eddie to print something in his column in exchange for the exclusive to his life story. Eddie really needs this for a boost to his career and reputation, so he accepts Cletus's offer. As Eddie turns to leave the room, Venom tells him to look into Cletus's cell. Inside there are drawings on all the walls that at first seem like scribblings and other random nonsense. However, when Eddie gets back to his apartment, Venom recreates exactly what they saw. From this information, Venom figures out where the bodies of Cletus's victims are buried. This causes Eddie's career to skyrocket and Cletus gets his death penalty reinstated. Cletus was planning on telling Eddie his whole life story, which presumably includes where he hid the bodies of his victims, so he should have expected this coming sooner or later. All is not well though. Eddie and Venom end up getting into a huge argument about Venom needing to eat human brains. Venom can't survive on chocolate and chicken brains alone. Eddie and Venom go out into the streets and find a mugger. Venom almost bites the mugger's head off, but Eddie talks Venom into stopping at the last minute. If Venom is tired of eating chicken brains, then there are other types of animal brains available to eat as well. Venom should try that first before resorting to eating human brains. Eddie's ex-fiancée Anne calls him and apologizes for not returning his calls. She also tells Eddie that she has some news and wants to meet up tomorrow night to talk. Eddie and Anne meet at a restaurant and Anne reveals that she's now engaged to Dan. Eddie and Venom are both very sad and displeased to hear this since they still love Anne and want to get back together with her. The next morning, Venom tries to cook Eddie breakfast to cheer him up. Eddie gets a postcard from Cletus in the mail inviting him to witness his execution. Cletus feels that Eddie is responsible for his death, so it's only right that Eddie attends. On the postcard, we get a sense of what Cletus's life was like as a child. He talks about killing his grandma and his mother. Furthermore, Cletus was beaten by his dad before getting sent to St. Estes. He was bullied relentlessly by the other kids until a young Francis saved him one day. They immediately fell in love, and Francis is a big part of why Cletus does what he is going to do later in the movie. Venom warns Eddie not to go to Cletus's execution and tells him that it's a bad idea, but Eddie disagrees. Eddie should have taken Venom's advice and stayed at home. He doesn't owe Cletus anything and doesn't have to listen to him. The rest of this movie could have been avoided if Eddie simply didn't go to visit Cletus again. Once at the prison, Eddie and Cletus get into a heated argument. The serial killer is able to get under Venom's skin, causing the symbiote to lash out and grab Cletus with a tentacle. Venom throws Cletus around and slams him against the wall before pulling him closer. This is where Cletus bites Eddie in the hand. The serial killer realizes that Eddie's blood doesn't taste right, but he ingests it anyway as Eddie leaves. The biggest problem that Eddie and Venom are having at this moment is each other. They are supposed to be a symbiotic team, but instead, they clash constantly, causing a rift between them. Eddie and Venom's teamwork degraded even further, causing the most issues once they were at the prison. Eddie speaking to Cletus was unnecessary, but he was driven by greed for more of the story. Instead, what Eddie got was a rant aimed directly at him. Venom lashing out and grabbing Cletus was incredibly short-sighted. It's a miracle that the prison guards or cameras didn't see Venom and cause an even bigger scene. If the two heroes were working together, then Carnage would have never been born. Eddie and Venom continue to argue with each other at home. They get into a big fight. Venom feels unappreciated and separates from Eddie. The symbiote goes off on its own, jumping from body to body. Back at the prison, they start Cletus's execution by lethal injection. As the chemicals begin to pump into his veins, something pushes it back out. Red tentacles burst forth from Cletus, killing most of the people near him. The warden is knocked to the ground outside of the chamber. He watches as a red claw comes out of the smoke. Then Cletus appears with his new Carnage symbiote wrapped around himself. Carnage goes straight for the warden and almost bites his head off until an alarm sounds, hurting the symbiote. Carnage destroys the alarm and the warden continues to run, but Carnage is hot on his tail, killing everyone in its way. After a very violent scene where many prison guards are killed, Carnage spins its body so fast that it creates a hurricane and sucks the warden in. Cletus asks the warden for his last words before killing him. Carnage then breaks out of the prison and transforms back into Cletus. The warden made many mistakes in his attempt to escape Carnage. To begin with, he saw what happened inside the execution chamber, yet he still waited until Carnage came out before he tried to run. The warden should have started running immediately. The alarm also hurt Carnage since symbiotes are weak to loud sounds, so the warden could have told the guards to turn on all the alarms in the prison. I'm sure there's more than one alarm in the entire prison. Meanwhile, Eddie cleans up his apartment and evicts the two chickens. Eddie finds out on the news that Cletus escaped from the prison. Patrick comes to warn Eddie about Cletus's escape and tells him to lay low. Venom attends a rave and finally receives some appreciation from attendants. The symbiote moves from host to host as they keep passing out. The people seem to be unable to handle Venom inside their body. Venom going from host to host during the rave was a little messed up. I'm not sure if the people possessed were just hurt or died. Either way, Venom left a lot of bodies broken and foaming at the mouth. Venom should also be avoiding raves in the first place since loud music is a big weakness for symbiotes. Venom is still sad about Eddie though. Eddie does some research and goes to the now rundown St. Estes Reform School, where he discovers a tree with Cletus and Francis's initials carved into it. Eddie thinks that Cletus will try to locate Francis and he calls Patrick. However, Patrick tells Eddie that it's impossible because Francis died, and he's the one who killed her. Patrick is unaware that Francis is still alive. Cletus steals a fancy car with Carnage and they drive off. Carnage plans to kill Venom so they will be indestructible. Cletus agrees to help if Carnage will help him find Francis first. Cletus uses Carnage to somehow hack into a laptop at the gas station and he discovers where Francis is being kept. Cletus finds Francis and uses Carnage to break her out of her cell while killing several of the guards and staff members. Together, Cletus and Francis escape in the stolen car. Francis shouldn't know how to drive. She was locked in the institution for the last few decades and wouldn't have the opportunity to receive driving lessons. There's a small police chase where Carnage suspends the car they're driving in the air before attacking all the officers chasing them. During this battle, Francis uses her sonic sound powers, which hurts Carnage pretty badly, and Carnage threatens to eat Francis's face if she does it again. After that, Cletus and Francis head off to their destination. Now, here is is a big problem with the movie. The symbiotes aren't new, and while the general public may not know about them, the government certainly does due to what happened in the first Venom movie. There was even mention at the beginning of the movie of how the FBI is currently investigating Eddie and Venom. How come there was no symbiote response team after the previous movie's incidents? I don't feel like it would have been hard for them to figure out the aliens' weaknesses. Then a response team could have been prepared and sent to battle. Inside the facility where Francis was kept, we have the same situation. Here is a prison that is meant to hold supervillains with wild powers, yet there was virtually no defense against any outside attacks. It seemed like regular cops and guards were trying to fight these villains, and that doesn't make any sense. The facility should have had superpowered defenses, considering they held very dangerous people. Venom takes refuge at Mrs. Chen's shop and bonds with her. Once the police discover what happened at the Ravencroft Institute, Patrick brings Eddie into the police station for questioning. Patrick doesn't let Eddie leave, believing that he knows something else that he is not saying. Patrick tells Eddie that people are seeing monsters. Eddie realizes that Cletus must have also bonded with a symbiote after biting his hand. Eddie decides that it's time to find Venom, and he calls Anne for help since she's a lawyer. Eddie admits to Anne that Venom is gone. Anne finds Venom at Mrs. Chen's shop, and she convinces the symbiote to bond with her body. Then Anne goes back to Eddie and uses Venom to break him out of the police station. After a bit of begging and banter, Eddie and Venom make up and come together to once again become the lethal protector. While all this is happening, Cletus and Francis burn down St. Estes. They then agree to capture each other's biggest enemies and bring them to a mock wedding where they will kill them. For Francis, this person is Patrick. She hates him for shooting her eye out. For Cletus, it's Eddie, and for Carnage, it's Venom. At this point, things begin to come together. Cletus kidnaps Patrick and Francis breaks into Eddie's apartment, but he's not there. Francis finds a ring in the drawer and realizes that it's meant for Anne. Afterwards, Francis kidnaps Anne and lets Dan go so he can warn Eddie and tell him where to come. Cletus and Francis take Patrick and Anne to a cathedral to wait for Eddie and Venom to arrive. It isn't long before the lethal protector shows up. Venom doesn't want to fight Carnage at first since red symbiotes are apparently very deadly and dangerous, but Eddie promises to let Venom eat everyone except the priest, so the final battle begins. Francis tries to use her sound powers against Venom, but is stopped since it also hurts Carnage. This upsets Cletus, but Carnage tells Francis to keep her mouth shut. Patrick is able to escape when Carnage and Francis are distracted talking to each other. He goes to the roof while Francis chases after him. Francis catches up and seemingly kills Patrick. Venom and Carnage go head to head. The battle seems fairly evenly matched, with the two symbiotes throwing each other around the room as they punch and stab each other. Venom even eats a piece of Carnage to free itself from the symbiote's grasp. No one seems to have the upper hand until Carnage eats the priest's head and gains a power boost. Carnage grows bigger and starts to get the advantage on Venom until Dan pours gasoline and fire onto it. Before Carnage can fully recover and eat Dan, the cathedral's massive bell begins to ring. This puts Carnage and Venom in a lot of pain and causes Cletus and Eddie to fight on their own for a bit until the symbiotes recover. The battle continues with Eddie and Cletus switching between their symbiote forms as they fight. Cletus is mad at Eddie since he only told one side of the story and left out the part where Cletus was being abused by his family members. Carnage is way too strong and defeats Eddie and Venom. Carnage then takes Anne to the top of the cathedral where Francis is to kill her. However, once up there, Carnage attempts to kill Francis again to shut her up for good, which causes Cletus to try and split from the symbiote. When Eddie and Venom notice this, they get a second win as they realize that Cletus and Carnage are not as compatible as they thought. However, Eddie and Venom are a good match. Venom sneaks up to the top of the cathedral. When it gets above Carnage, Venom jumps down and stabs Carnage in the face with a metal pole right before Anne is eaten. Venom then saves Anne from falling to her death before getting captured by Carnage again. Venom realizes that it needs a little more help stopping Carnage and goes for his symbiote's biggest weakness, sound. Venom throws Francis into the cathedral's massive bell, causing her to fall. Francis screams and the sound hurts both Venom and Carnage. The bell also falls on Francis. It's not clear whether or not Francis died from this. The director of the movie has stated that Francis might still be alive and could be a part of future Venom movies. Venom and Carnage are separated from their hosts and sent tumbling down. Venom saves Eddie from the fall in the nick of time, but Cletus slams into the ground hard. Carnage tries to crawl back and bond with the serial killer, but Venom eats the symbiote. claiming that it didn't taste good. Venom then picks Cletus up and bites his head off. Before dying, Cletus tells Eddie that he just wanted his friendship. Friends don't try to kill other friends though, so Cletus is clearly lying here. Killing him was the right decision. A lot of things could have been done differently during this final battle, but the main problem was tactics. Venom and Eddie knew that they were going to face another symbiote. Considering that they have an intricate knowledge of a symbiote's weakness, it seems foolish that they didn't prepare better. For instance, they could have brought some form of fire with them, such as a flamethrower, to help weaken Carnage. Eddie and Venom could have also snuck to the top of the cathedral and used the element of surprise instead of going through the front doors. Once up there, it wouldn't have been hard to sneak attack Francis while dropping the cathedral's bell on Carnage. This would have made the final fight much easier and quicker. Additionally, Venom could have tried bonding with Dan while Eddie was stuck under the rubble. Carnage was about to kill Anne, so they didn't have a lot of time to waste and needed to save her as quickly as possible. Eating Carnage and Cletus in the end was the most brilliant move Venom and Eddie made throughout the whole movie, since it ensured that Carnage and Cletus wouldn't cause any more trouble for them in the future. Eddie and Venom are also lucky that Carnage didn't use that tornado move again. After the battle, Eddie, Anne, and Dan escape before the police arrive and swarm the place. Eddie tells Anne and Dan to take care and they go their separate ways. Patrick is revealed to still be alive, but his eyes are blue. In the comics, Patrick Mulligan is a host to a symbiote called Toxin, so this is probably what the filmmakers are setting up for future Venom movies. Eddie and Venom decide to take a vacation since they're fugitives. Finally, the movie ends with Eddie and Venom relaxing on a beach. They think about where they're going next. In the mid-credit scene, Eddie and Venom are watching a telenovela. Venom tells Eddie about the symbiote's 80 billion light-years worth of hive knowledge across universes. Venom gives Eddie a small taste. There's a bright light and Eddie is transported to another hotel room in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Eddie and Venom watch the news where J. Jonah Jameson exposes Peter Parker's identity as Spider-Man. It doesn't really make sense why Peter took his mask off though. He doesn't want people to know that he's Spider-Man, so he should have kept his mask on to protect his identity. A random guy wonders what Eddie is doing in his room, but he isn't able to reply. In Spider-Man: No Way Home, it's revealed that Eddie was transported to the Marvel Cinematic Universe because of Doctor Strange's botched spell. People from other universes who knew Spider-Man's identity were summoned, and since Venom shares hive knowledge with the other symbiotes across universes, Eddie Brock in Spider-Man 3 knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Venom: Let There Be Carnage made over $501 million at the box office and was the 7th highest grossing movie of 2021. The film received mixed reviews from critics, but many considered it to be an improvement over the first Venom film. A third Venom movie is also currently in active development. The producers have stated that they're interested in doing more crossovers with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Andy Serkis mentioned that he would like to return as director and wanted to explore other villains held at the Ravencroft Institute. There's a Morbius movie coming out on April 1st, 2022. That's also set in Sony's Spider-Man universe, as well as a Kraven the Hunter movie coming out in January 2023. What did you think of Venom: Let There Be Carnage? I personally thought it was pretty great and a lot of fun to watch overall. The action was awesome and the fight scenes were amazing. Tom Hardy was really good as Eddie Brock, and I'm definitely looking forward to watching more Venom movies in the future. Which movie or anime should I do next? Leave a suggestion. Be sure to also check out some of the other videos on this channel. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a future upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
As you can see, that's why Venom: Let There Be Carnage easily beats Sword Art Online. Venom gives us intense action scenes, solid acting, and visuals that actually impress. It knows how to keep you hooked from start to finish. On the other hand, SAO drags with weak storytelling, flat characters, and awkward moments that just don't land. Venom knows how to have fun and deliver, while SAO falls flat and tries way too hard to be deep without any payoff.